please listen. Because before we go any further, you need to hear this, with the part of you that remembers what your mind tries to forget. The part of you that still tenses when a familiar kind of silence enters the room. Right now, at this very moment, someone is realizing they completely misjudged you, and what you're about to learn is going to make everything that ever confused you suddenly click into place. You are not here by accident, and you didn't land on this video by coincidence. You were drawn here because God needs you to finally understand why certain people feared you, studied you, and tried so desperately to dim a light they never gave you in the first place. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will explain every strange shift you sensed but couldn't name, every odd silence that lingered too long, every coincidental betrayal your spirit recognized before your mind could process it. And when we reach the end, we're going to pray together, because once this truth settles into your soul, you will never see yourself, or them, the same way again. So breathe, open your heart, and let this next part speak directly to the places inside you that have been waiting for understanding. Here is the truth they hoped you would never find. Here you are, still standing, still breathing, still here long enough to finally hear the truth they worked so hard to bury. Yes, you, the one whose name kept echoing through rooms you were never allowed to enter, the one they insisted they had moved on from, even as they dissected your every move behind closed doors, the one they pretended no longer mattered while secretly making you the center of every private strategy session. Sit with this for a moment, because what you're about to understand will shatter every gentle lie they ever used to keep you quiet, compliant, and confused. They finally broke, under the weight of their own schemes, their own rehearsed performances, their own exhaustion from trying to control what could never be owned. And when they broke, they confessed everything, every whispered plan, every coordinated reaction, every carefully engineered moment meant to make you doubt your own reality. While you were struggling to heal, trying to move forward, telling yourself you might be overthinking, wondering if your instincts had betrayed you. They were busy manufacturing a false world around you. And the truth is, you were never paranoid. You were precise. You were accurate. You were right. And it was darker than you imagined, yet strangely, powerfully validating. Because now you know with certainty that you were never the problem. You never were. It began the moment they realized you weren't responding the way they expected. From the first time you didn't collapse on cue. From the first time silence replaced your tears. From the first time you walked away instead of begging for clarity. That was the moment they gathered. A meeting so deliberate, so focused, that your name alone filled the agenda. They analyzed you like a malfunctioning program. Why didn't you explode when provoked? Why didn't you chase when abandoned? Why didn't you break when isolated? They searched for the missing reaction they depended on to feel powerful. Because their control had always been built on predictability, on knowing exactly which emotional button to press, and how hard to press it before you folded. But somewhere in the shadows, you rewrote yourself. Quietly, without announcement, without permission. And suddenly, their manual stopped working. One of them finally said it out loud, worn down by the effort. They spoke your name like it carried weight, like it had drained something from them. And then came the admission they never intended to voice. They believed you were fragile, moldable, dependent, someone who needed their approval to survive. But every time they pushed, you didn't bend. You disappeared. And when you returned, you were no longer reachable. They tested every weakness, ran every scenario, attempted every emotional lever they'd ever used on others. Nothing worked. There was no wound they could weaponize, no fear they could reliably trigger, no guilt that still hooked into you. Fighting you, they said, felt like fighting a shadow that had learned how to resist without ever raising its voice. That's what they called you, a shadow. Not because you vanished, but because you learned how to exist outside their reach. And then came the part they never expected would surface. The part that turns your stomach and steadies your spine at the same time. They admitted to planting people in your life. Those coincidental encounters that felt too perfectly timed. The friendships that rushed intimacy before trust could grow. The helpers who appeared exactly when you were vulnerable. Some of them weren't accidents. They were assignments. Watchers disguised as allies. Informants wrapped in empathy. Their goal was simple. Get close. Gather your truths. Locate your scars. Harvest your fears and carry the information back. They were meant to find the soft underbelly you were supposedly hiding. But here's the irony they never planned for. Many of those people came back with nothing. Confused, frustrated, some even quietly disturbed by what they couldn't extract from you. And a few of them changed, not because they meant to, but because standing in your presence stripped something false from their own lives. Your calm, your authenticity, your refusal to perform for approval unsettled them. It challenged their compromises. Some began to see the rot inside the system they had agreed to serve. The strategy itself was cold, methodical, and cruel. Step 1. Isolation. Sever your support. Undermine your confidence in your own perception. Turn mutual connections into quiet enemies until you appeared unstable. Step 2. Provocation. Poke every emotional wound. Trigger reactions. Then label your pain as dysfunction. Step 3. Narrative control. Rewrite the story before you could speak. Turn your boundaries into flaws. Turn your silence into guilt. Step 4. Replacement. Fill the empty spaces with new faces meant to signal your disposability. They executed this like a blueprint, and for a moment, it nearly worked. It would have crushed most people. But you weren't built like most people. You were the glitch they couldn't anticipate. When isolation failed to destroy you, when solitude actually made you stronger, their fear ignited. They expected loneliness to starve you into submission. Instead, you fed on the quiet. You built a life from the debris they left behind. You found peace in the absence they designed as punishment, and watching you grow where they planted ruin dismantled them from the inside out. One of them finally said what haunted them all. We gave them nothing, and they built everything. They couldn't comprehend how you survived without the approval they once dangled like oxygen. That's when they realized their power only ever existed because you believed in it. The moment you stopped believing, it evaporated. And now for the part that heals as much as it horrifies. Every time your instincts tingled, every time the room felt wrong, every time conversations seemed rehearsed and reactions felt scripted, you were sensing the truth. They practiced before seeing you. They synchronized their stories. They decided what version of reality you would be offered. It wasn't coincidence. It was coordination. A full conspiracy dressed up as concern. And the most twisted part? They believed they were doing it for your own good. They called control protection. They called deception love. They called the demolition of your inner world justification. That level of narcissism is suffocating. The arrogance required to believe another person's reality needs editing. But your body knew. Your nervous system knew. Something in you never stopped registering the falseness of the air around you, even when your mind tried to rationalize it. And when you spoke up, they called you paranoid. When you sensed the shift, they called you sensitive. When you refused their version of truth, they labeled you unstable. That is the cruelty of coordinated gaslighting. It attacks the compass itself. For a while, it worked. You doubted your memories. You softened your truth to avoid conflict. You apologized for reactions that were entirely justified. But then the pivot happened, quietly, without a declaration. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped defending your character to people who only listened in order to distort you. And the moment they realized they had truly lost you was the moment your silence no longer asked for permission. They admitted it terrified them. Because your disengagement wasn't passive, it was sovereign. Their approval no longer fed you. Their judgment no longer guided or wounded you. You became untouchable not through aggression, but through indifference rooted in clarity. They tried to lure you back with disguised apologies, carefully staged reconciliations, manipulative olive branches that still required self-betrayal. But you met every attempt with a steady calm that made their efforts look childish. You understood that engaging again would only mean reopening a wound that had finally closed. They said the version of you that emerged from that wreckage was unrecognizable, not in appearance, but in presence. The hunger for validation had vanished. The instinct to shrink had died off completely. The willingness to mold yourself for the comfort of others disappeared like it had never existed. They described it as watching someone shed a skin they didn't even realize had been forced onto them. A costume made of obligation, guilt, fear, and manipulation. And what remained underneath that old disguise was something they could no longer touch. Raw, sovereign, unfiltered, immune to charm, resistant to intimidation, unavailable for control. You didn't just survive what they built to destroy you. You outgrew it. And in doing so, you became the one thing they never planned for, free beyond their reach, and powerful precisely because you no longer needed to prove it. It moved beyond their reach in a way that unsettled them more than any confrontation ever could. One of them finally said the word out loud, his voice trembling with equal parts awe and resentment impenetrable. Another whisper, almost bitterly, unreachable. A third reached for something softer and called it evolution. But the way they said it turned the word into a curse. Because your evolution forced them to confront everything in themselves they had spent years avoiding. Your growth cast a harsh light on their stagnation. Your freedom exposed the cages they still defended as necessary. You didn't merely leave their system. You destroyed the lie that it was unavoidable. You proved the bars were imagined, the locks were illusions, and the guards they feared were just frightened people clinging to borrowed authority. And nothing infuriates the imprisoned more than watching someone walk freely through a door they've convinced themselves was sealed shut for life. Your very existence became evidence that their hierarchy of control was nothing but theater. Every whispered rumor about you, every desperate attempt to rewrite your story, was really an effort to escape the truth you embodied. Liberation was always possible, and their rules were just chains made of fear. Even now, as they pretend indifference, they cannot look away. They observe from a distance with quiet obsession. They scroll through your life in the dark, dissect your updates, and ask carefully worded questions through mutual connections, all disguised as casual curiosity. They tell themselves it's harmless, that they're merely checking in. But deep down they are searching for proof that you've fallen apart without them. Instead, what they find cuts deeper than any insult ever could. You are at peace. You are building without their interference, growing without their permission, succeeding without their validation. Every smile they see that doesn't include them, every milestone you reach alone, slices through their illusion like glass. Each victory is living proof that they were never essential, only obstructive, and that truth follows them into their quiet moments, into late nights where distraction fails. If you are better without them, what does that say about their worth? If your peace multiplies in their absence, what does that reveal about their presence? These questions haunt them like restless ghosts, poisoning every attempt at self-justification. In their moment of wary honesty, the truth finally spilled. They admitted to the subtle cruelties you once mistook for coincidence, the information they withheld by accident, the events scheduled when they knew you couldn't attend, so your absence could be framed as unreliability. They confessed to praising you publicly while poisoning your name in private, to pretending to support your dreams while quietly undermining them. They sought your advice only to discard it, then twisted the blame onto you when their own choices collapsed. Each move was delicate, calculated, never enough to expose them outright, but always enough to make you doubt yourself. Their goal was never to destroy you loudly. It was to corrode you slowly, to make your strength feel like arrogance, your awareness feel like paranoia, your boundaries feel like cruelty. Every maneuver was psychological warfare dressed up as concern, but here is the poetic justice they never anticipated. Every tactic they used to weaken you only made you stronger. The more they withheld, the more self-reliant you became. The more they sought control, the more clearly you realized you owed them no access at all. They tried to erode your foundation, only to reveal that you were your foundation all along. You stopped reaching for support from the very hands that built your cage. And when you finally stepped beyond it, they were left behind in the dust of their own illusions, watching you walk away unbroken, unstoppable, untouchable. Their manipulation thrived on subtlety. Every cruelty came wrapped in plausible deniability. Every cold dismissal was presented as a misunderstanding. Every broken promise was softened with a reasonable excuse. And when you dared to confront them, they twisted the blade deeper. You're too sensitive. You're reading too much into it. Your pain became the problem. Your clarity became overreaction. Your intuition became instability. It was the most refined form of psychological warfare, turning your accurate perception of harm into the very evidence they used against you. They sought to make you distrust the one thing that could save you, your inner knowing. And when you tried to name what was happening, they used your truth as ammunition to destroy your credibility. It was not accidental. It was design. But you did not remain blind. You began to document, to collect patterns, to observe instead of react. What once felt chaotic became coherent. What once seemed random revealed itself as strategy, and the confession confirmed it. All they provoked you intentionally, trying to extract emotional reactions so they could point at the fallout and call you unstable. They stayed calm while you defended yourself, so they could frame your humanity as hysteria. It was all staged, carefully rehearsed theater with you cast as the villain. And the moment you stopped playing your assigned role, the entire production collapsed. When you stopped reacting, they lost their script. You became unreadable, and unreadable meant uncontrollable. The meeting where everything finally cracked happened, not because of courage, but because of exhaustion. Maintaining deception had begun to rot them from the inside. Someone broke the unspoken rule of silence and said what froze them all. We've been treating them like a threat, but the real threat was how they made us feel about ourselves. From there, the confessions poured out, jealousy disguised as worry, envy wrapped in, constructive criticism, insecurity projected as concern for your behavior. Your success did not hurt them because it harmed them. It hurt them because it exposed them. Your peace didn't offend them because it excluded them. It offended them because it revealed their chaos. You were never difficult to love. You were impossible to control. What they feared most was your example. They were terrified that your freedom would become contagious, that others would see you walk away unbothered and realize they could too, that your standards would expose their compromises, that your authenticity would highlight their performance. Every act of sabotage was driven by this fear. They didn't try to destroy you because they hated you. They tried to destroy you because you made them see themselves. When control slipped through their fingers, they reached for the most predictable strategy of all, replacement. They scrambled to fill your space with new faces, new energy, new echoes of what you once provided. It was meant to punish you and soothe them, to prove you were replaceable. But they misunderstood the nature of what you were. You were never a role. You were a presence. They could copy behaviors, but not essence. They could mimic your tone, but not your depth. The replacements crumbled beneath expectations that were never theirs to carry. And in every failed substitution, The truth grew louder. Authenticity cannot be cloned. Your absence became more powerful than your presence ever was. They still watch. Through fake accounts. Through secondhand updates. Through comparisons they pretend not to make. And what haunts them most is not your success, but the realization that they could have chosen the same freedom. And didn't. You didn't destroy them. You simply refused to keep calling their cage home. And now they live with the sound of that open door echoing in their minds. In a final slip of honesty, one of them muttered, almost in defeat, "I think we made a mistake. I think we destroyed something rare because we couldn't handle how it made us feel." That sentence changed nothing externally, but it confirmed everything internally. You were never the problem. You were the mirror. And mirrors are dangerous to those who survive on denial. They chose to try to destroy the reflection instead of face themselves. But when a mirror shatters, the truth doesn't disappear. It multiplies. Now they are surrounded by the fragments of their own avoidance. And here is the turning point that belongs only to you. Their regret does not define your redemption. Their confession does not validate your truth. It only timestamps their awakening. You were healing long before they unraveled. You were free long before they admitted what they did. Your nervous system knew the truth when your mind was still trying to rationalize. This is not revelation. This is confirmation. Truth does not require upkeep. Lies do. And now, finally, comes the part they never wanted you to reach. The part where the truth stops circling around you and lands directly in your hands with a weight that feels both ancient and brand new. Because once the lies collapsed, once their scripts burned to ash, once their carefully constructed version of you could no longer hold itself upright, something extraordinary began to rise in its place. You, the real you, the unedited you. The version they tried to dismantle before it could fully awaken. And what makes this moment so powerful is that your clarity didn't come from their confession. It came from your evolution. Their unraveling only highlighted what your spirit had already sensed. You were walking out of illusions long before they stumbled into honesty. Every boundary you set was a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. Every silence was a reclamation. Every retreat was a rescue. Every refusal to explain was a declaration that your worth was no longer up for negotiation. You didn't heal because they admitted the truth. You healed because something sacred inside you refused to die in the dark they built. You rose, not dramatically, not loudly, but with a quiet consistency that terrified them far more than any confrontation ever could. You became the one thing their manipulation could never anticipate: a person who no longer needed external permission to exist. And the strength you stand in now is not born from revenge or superiority. It's born from liberation, a liberation so complete that even their regret cannot touch it. You see, power isn't reclaimed in the moment someone apologizes. It's reclaimed in the moment you no longer need the apology to move forward. And that's where you are right now, standing at the threshold of a life that is no longer shaped by their distortions, but by your own truth, your own discernment, your own alignment. What they tried to bury has become the foundation you rise from. What they tried to steal has become the evidence of your resilience. What they tried to distort has become the clarity that guides your every next step. And the most poetic part of all, they can't undo the version of you that has emerged. They can't unsee the power you reclaimed. They can't reverse the awakening they accidentally sparked. They can only watch, silently, painfully, endlessly, as you step into a future that was always yours, carrying a truth they were never strong enough to handle. You are no longer within their reach, no longer living in their shadow, no longer bound to their version of who you were supposed to be. You are free now, and freedom once tasted can never be undone. And now finally comes the part they never wanted you to reach. The part where the truth stops circling around you and lands directly in your hands with a weight that feels both ancient and brand new. Because once the lies collapsed, once their scripts burned to ash, once their carefully constructed version of you could no longer hold itself upright, something extraordinary began to rise in its place. You, the real you, the unedited you, the version they tried to dismantle before it could fully awaken. And what makes this moment so powerful is that your clarity didn't come from their confession. It came from your evolution. Their unraveling only highlighted what your spirit had already sensed. You were walking out of illusions long before they stumbled into honesty. Every boundary you set was a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. Every silence was a reclamation. Every retreat was a rescue. Every refusal to explain was a declaration that your worth was no longer up for negotiation. You didn't heal because they admitted the truth. You healed because something sacred inside you refused to die in the dark they built. You rose, not dramatically, not loudly, but with a quiet consistency that terrified them far more than any confrontation ever could. You became the one thing their manipulation could never anticipate, a person who no longer needed external permission to exist. And the strength you stand in now is not born from revenge or superiority. It's born from liberation. A liberation so complete that even their regret cannot touch it. You see, power isn't reclaimed in the moment someone apologizes. It's reclaimed in the moment you no longer need the apology to move forward. And that's where you are right now, standing at the threshold of a life that is no longer shaped by their distortions, but by your own truth, your own discernment, your own alignment. What they tried to bury has become the foundation you rise from. What they tried to steal has become the evidence of your resilience. What they tried to distort has become the clarity that guides your every next step. And the most poetic part of all, they can't undo the version of you that has emerged. They can't unsee the power you reclaimed. They can't reverse the awakening they accidentally sparked. They can only watch, silently, painfully, endlessly, as you step into a future that was always yours, carrying a truth they were never strong enough to handle. You are no longer within their reach, no longer living in their shadow, no longer bound to their version of who you were supposed to be. You are free now, and freedom once tasted can never be undone. Prayer in closing. Dear Father, I ask for the deepening of my faith. Teach me to trust you even when tangible proof is absent. Help me rest in the certainty of your presence, knowing your plans for me are for peace, not harm. Plans to give me a future filled with hope. Thank you for hearing my voice, for never leaving me, and for guiding me through what I could not survive alone. I offer this prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your constant provision and love. If this message touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Leave a comment about your journey and how you are preparing for your own season of victory. Stay with us for the next video, where we'll explore powerful signs that reveal your divine calling. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Keep shining, walk boldly in your purpose, and may blessings follow every step you take. From all of us at Enlightened Wisdom, see you next time.